Is that what the Tory party needs, a Farage takeover?
Yeah, like a big hole in their head.
What do you mean? He could be the saviour of right-wing
if
politics and political
Nigel,
parties.
if Nigel Farage takes over the Tory party, Harriet might get her 100 Labour peers free of charge. Tory peers crossing the floor. I mean, it's plausible, I have to say. That's what's so depressing, because obviously the opinion polls are horrific for the Conservatives at the moment. And the big opinion poll that came out on the Friday, even predicting we could go down to 60 or 70 seats. So things are not looking great, and the Tory party will be extremely vulnerable after the election if it does lose in the way that people are predicting.
Good morning. It's Times Radio Breakfast with Callum MacDonald and Jane Mulkerrins here on a Sunday morning. Now, 7 days a week, just after 9 a.m, we get the views of two thoughtful people and big brains on the news of the day.
And this morning we're joined by Harriet Harman, now former Labour MP. Good morning, Harriet.
Good morning.
Hello, good to speak to you. And also Times Radio's Lord Vaizey of Didcot. Ed Vaizey, good morning to you. Oh, we'll get Ed in a minute. We're waking him up, apparently. And you can join the conversation by WhatsApping us. The number is 0333 003 2353. You can text 87222, starting your message with the word Times, or you can email studio@times.radio. We've got lots of general election conversation to be had between now and 9:30, including what should you do and what shouldn't you do when you're on the campaign trail. How are both of the main parties performing when it comes to the key areas, the key topics, the key policy announcements? What's Nigel Farage talking about when he says he wants to stage a takeover of the Conservative Party? And of course, the front page of the Sunday Times today.
Yeah, first up, let's talk about this one. Labour offers MPs peerages to step down. According to Caroline Wheeler, political editor, I'll get my teeth in, of the Sunday Times, and Gabriel Pogrund, a string of former Labour MPs, including Diane Abbott, have been offered peerages to quit and make way for allies of Keir Starmer. They say a number of left-wingers say that since the election announcement, they've been told they would be elevated to the House of Lords if they gave up their seats. Now, whether or not we have Ed on the line, let's start. Someone go round and give him a knock-up, would you? Harriet, let's start with you. Is this business as usual? Is this what every party does in the lead up to an election when they're shuffling their cards and trying to put in place the people they want in the Commons, the people they want in the Lords, or is this something new?
No, I don't give this much, so I've got a great deal of respect for the Sunday Times. I don't give this story any credence at all. Why would it be necessary? I think there's some Labour members like myself who are standing down, who've been many decades in Parliament. And speaking personally, I hung on until the party was in safe hands and stable, and now I'm retiring. But the majority of the candidates that we've got are either sitting members of Parliament who are going to carry on, or the new candidates in new seats where we don't need Labour people to stand down. We need to win against the Tories. So the story of our candidates is in seats that we need to win. And bear in mind, at the last election, the Conservatives won 162 more seats than Labour. So the idea that we've got loads of people sitting in seats and we need them to stand down, so Keir's allies need to take over, it's just not right. And the majority, the overwhelming majority of the Parliamentary Labour Party have, even throughout the Corbyn years, been sort of centrist Keir type of people anyway. So I just think this story is wrong. And actually, Rishi Sunak will decide how many is on the dissolution honours list. Always there's dissolution honours and it always includes some people who've done public service in the Commons, then going up into the House of Lords. And I think Keir will be looking for people who are going to work hard in the House of Lords scrutinising legislation. So, I'm afraid I just don't think it's true.
So you haven't been offered a peerage?
Well, I'm not saying anything about myself. I've said in the past that I would like to go in the House of Lords, but, you just have to see what happens. And these things are, very untransparent, as you all know. But I'm just saying the overall politics of this picture it's not true. And why would it be true anyway? We're trying to fill vacancies where there isn't a Labour MP, where we're trying to actually remove a Tory MP. We're not trying to remove Labour MPs, except for those who are removing themselves, like me.
Okay, so that's a no comment, but yes, please, if there's one going. Absolutely right. Ed, good morning.
Good morning.
So earlier on, we had Luke Francis, the former Labour advisor, speaking to us about this story. And he said that this moving people aside and moving in people from central office was a way of minimising risk for an incoming Labour government. Is that true?
What, moving aside people like Diane Abbott is a way of
And
minimising?
moving in people from central office, is this...
Oh,
is this
yes.
is this a way of minimising risk?
The Tories call their headquarters central
Yes.
office. That's what confused me. Labour call, I don't know what they call their headquarters, the bunker? Who knows? Anyway, look, I mean, I think there are many levels to the story. First of all, I have no problem with Keir Starmer wanting to impose his candidates on constituencies. It's one of the great nightmares for any political leader, having a parliamentary party full of absolute Looney Tunes, which is to a certain extent what the Tories have discovered over many, many years. So, frankly, most Tories would be looking at what Keir Starmer was doing and thinking if only we'd behaved in that way and got actually some normal people to be elected as MPs rather than some of the people we have on our benches. So I have no particular problem with that. As far as offering peerages to people, whether he's offered one to Diane Abbott, who knows? But Labour do have a strong case for saying that they are outnumbered in the House of Lords. Even though the Tories government loses every single vote in the House of Lords, we lose it because of a combination of Labour and the Lib Dems ganging up together. By far the biggest overrepresented party in the House of Lords is probably the Liberal Democrats. So I can see a reason why Keir Starmer would want to add a lot of peers to the House of Lords. And it also helps him to a certain extent. It weirdly sort of delegitimises the House of Lords a bit. There'll be an almighty row if he creates 100 peers, sort of a la Lloyd George. But that would suit him because he doesn't particularly like the House of Lords. But so I would certainly expect... I heard Harriet's firm denial that he's planning to offer peerages to all these people, and it might not, it's out of the frying pan into the fire if Diane Abbott goes into the House of Lords, but her power would be significantly less. I mean, it's obvious that Harriet Harman will go into the House of Lords. That goes without saying. If you've been deputy leader of the Labour Party and an MP for 40 years, the idea that you wouldn't go into the House of Lords is for the birds. But we'll see whether he extends it to some of his left-wing critics.
Will you take Harriet for her first lunch, Ed?
Well,
on the assumption,
it's very well. First of all, I've never ever been asked to support anyone being introduced to the House of Lords, which really upsets me. Everyone who comes into it's like being picked for your five-a-side football team. Everyone who comes into the House of Lords chooses two supporters, and I've never been chosen in 4 years. Not a single new member of the House of Lords has asked me to be their supporter.
Cronyism at its worst.
Harriet won't choose me. She'll choose two stalwart Labour people. She'll probably choose the Labour leader of the House of Lords as befits her status, and probably whoever her oldest friend in the House of Lords is. I'd expect Neil Kinnock to be one of her supporters.
Harriet, would you like to speak on behalf of yourself at this point, or do you want to let Ed just rumble on?
We're really getting ahead of us ourselves.
There is a bit of that, isn't there?
Yeah.
I was going to ask you, Harriet. Ed mentions, if Sir Keir Starmer was to kind of pack the Lords, but the principle of the thing in any case, and it generates a row about the House of Lords. Is that what is the consequence of a row about the House of Lords? They happen all the time, and as far as I can make out, it results in precisely nothing changing, nothing happening. It's a controversy for a day or two, but does it fundamentally change the dial on basically anything at all?
Well, I don't think that Keir Starmer would think it was right to put into the House of Lords people who the House of Lords Advisory Committee have said are not fit and proper people to be in the House of Lords. And I don't think he'd be wanting to put in people who are going to tarnish the reputation of the Labour Party or the House of Lords. And that's something that did happen under the Conservatives. But Ed Vaizey's right is that Labour is massively outnumbered in the House of Lords. But I think one of the things that we could be doing is starting to make a few inroads into removing the 92 hereditary peers who've not been proposed by anybody but are just there by birth. And this is part of the evolution and the change and the ending of the House of Lords that Keir Starmer has talked about. But, I think that there is something about the reputation of the party and doing things in a in a decent and honest way. And I don't think Keir will want to besmirch his own good reputation for probity by doing any dodgy deals in relation to the House of Lords. I just don't think he'll do it. He won't.
Shall we have a conversation about the Conservative Party, which apparently, Ed, Nigel Farage is planning to take over, according to the Sunday Times. Harry York spent some time, Deputy Political Editor Harry York spent some time with Nigel Farage this week. He is, of course, the Honorary President of Reform. He said he hoped the election result would allow the central players in right-wing politics to unite under one banner. Asked if he proposed a merger, he replied, more like a takeover. Is that what the Tory party needs, a Farage takeover?
Yeah, like a big hole in their head.
What do you mean? He could be the saviour of right-wing politics and political parties.
If Nigel Farage takes over the Tory party, Harriet might get her 100 Labour peers free of charge. Tory peers crossing the floor. I mean, it's plausible, I have to say. That's what's so depressing, because obviously the opinion polls are horrific for the Conservatives at the moment. And the big opinion poll that came out on the Friday, even predicting we could go down to 60 or 70 seats. So things are not looking great, and the Tory party will be extremely vulnerable after the election if it does lose in the way that people are predicting. And as we all know, when political parties lose elections, they tend not to read the right lesson. They go off the deep end. And just as Labour said, we haven't tried socialism, so let's have Jeremy Corbyn, that's why we keep losing, the Tories will automatically say we haven't tried conservatism, or we haven't tried Brexit properly, let's go off the deep end. And that will give an opening to Nigel Farage. And it will be, if Nigel Farage does try and join the Tory party and he's welcomed by some of the establishment figures who are sympathetic towards him, it will cause a huge existential crisis for the Tory party. It may indeed bring to the fore what is lying underneath the problems of the Tory party, which is still the issue of Europe is not resolved. We've had a European civil war in the Tory party for 30 or 40 years, and it is not resolved. And this will bring it to the fore.
So, Harriet, there's an interesting sort of principle at play here, which Sir Keir Starmer would suggest in his context in the Labour Party that he has changed the party following the Jeremy Corbyn era and the awful election defeat as far as the Labour Party were concerned. And so there's an interesting concept here about how broad a church is too broad a church within a political party. How do you focus a political party and unite it around its kind of core aims? And I suppose that's kind of the underlying thing here, isn't it, for the Tories? But I wonder if there's a kind of Labour lesson in there.
Well, firstly, I'd say in relation to what Ed said, is that we've got to be careful we don't get complacent. And I don't think anybody in the Labour Party is complacent, because although we can feel giddy with delight when we look at these opinion polls, not a single vote has been cast, and we do have a mountain to climb. As I said, the Tories won 162 more seats than us just as recently as 2019 and ended up with a majority of 80. So it's us that have got to do the winning of the seats, and the idea that we just automatically count them as our own already, I think that nobody thinks that. We've got to be out winning every single vote. But I think what we've got to be, and what Keir will be wanting us to be in the PLP, the Parliamentary Labour Party, after the election, is broad-based but united and disciplined. So you don't want to have unity based on a narrow sectarianism, and you don't want to be so broad-based that nobody really understands what you stand for, and you're a rebellious factional rabble. So that's what he'll be aiming for. You want to hear different points of view from different walks of life, different parts of the country, and different ideological views. But you've got to really have a core mission which people are united around. So that's what he'll be aiming for. After the chaos we've had with the Conservative government, nobody wants more factionalizing and instability. People want a bit of stability.
Can I ask on that note, Harriet, are the core missions cutting through? I mean, how can both parties do more? I mean, we were talking about it earlier here. We get quite carried away with the drama of it all, with the staffing, with people being parachuted into seats, with talking about Diane Abbott, whether she's going to stand. I mean, ultimately, people should be hearing about how the country will look in 5 weeks' time. Are we getting enough of that? Is it our fault for getting caught up in the drama, or are the political parties not doing enough to really tell us what they stand for?
well, we are all talking about those things. And, you know, at the margins, those things do tell you something about the party. But honestly, overwhelmingly on the doorstep, the conversation is being led by what people who open their doors to talk to the party campaigners are saying. And that is about chaos, things getting worse in the last 14 years, and wanting a change and problems with the NHS. So to an extent, the conversation on the doorstep is, you know, the parties want to direct the conversation on the doorstep. So, you know, we have launches that today's going to be the NHS, or tomorrow's going to be immigration, or the day after that's going to be employment and training. But actually, when people open the door, they tell you what's going on in their lives and what they're concerned about. And they, you know, they really only hear out of the corner of their minds, even if it's been like with Diane Abbott, it was the leading story on the BBC 10 o'clock news. But even then, people's main preoccupation is what's happening in their own lives. And I think it's the Tories' failure in terms of people's situation, their own family situation getting worse, which is at the heart of this election campaign. Meanwhile, you know, people like you and I discuss lots of other things, and at the margin, they can have implications. I'll tell you one thing, though, that did sort of bleed through from being a sort of insider story drama to out on the doorstep, and that was Partygate, because that was something that was happening in Number 10 with one particular party and a small group of people. My goodness me, it went right through onto the doorstep, and people were really dismayed about it.